Hey there, Danny with Right Foot Down. I messed up this ad read so many times because I really want to tell you about Track Monkey Apparel. They make great quality enthusiast shirts along with hats, stickers, watches, patches, you name it. A couple of my personal favorites are their Life is Better at the Track tee and their One Track Mind tee. You should really check them out and see for yourself. Their products are great for you or the gearhead in your life. Visit trackmonkeyapparel.com.
You're listening to the Untitled Car Show in partnership with RightFootDown.com. Visit Right Foot Down for your daily automotive fix. If you enjoyed today's program, please tell a friend. It's the best way to support this show. If you want to visit the archives, go to YouTube and search for Untitled Car Show. That'll bring you to the archived episodes. If you want to follow the show, just search for Untitled Car Show on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can always send an email to the show at untitledcarshow@rightfootdown.com. We're so glad you decided to spend the next hour or so with us. Without further ado, let's get into today's program. Just a recorder. There we go. All right. Thank you for joining us on today's show. I'm your host, Ike. Today we are joined by YouTube sensation. I'm going to go with sensation Austin of Austin's Garage. He has a plethora of videos about his wonderful fleet of absolutely cheap and wonderful cars. So, Austin, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. So, let's just get off with the first thing first. So, I think what you're most famous for is the Yugo. Do you think that's a fair assessment? Yeah.
I think that's a very fair assessment. It gets quite a lot of attention online and in person.
Mm-hmm. And you're not afraid. So you're based out of Atlanta at the moment, and you're not afraid of driving that thing crazy distances because you took that all the way up to Philly, and you let Doug DeMuro drive it around. Yeah.
Doug actually came down to Atlanta for that shoot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he drove right. He drove the Jaguar he did a video on. He was actually driving that. He got that from Turo. He drove that right to my house, knocked on my door. And it's a funny story. I was actually bent over the toilet. I had gotten food poisoning the day before. So during the whole test drive and the whole interview, I'm literally throwing up. Like it was a very fun shoot, but it was a terrible time for me.
That could have just been Doug. He has that effect on people, I've been told. So, so Doug came down. He's driving around with the Yugo. That has to be kind of surreal. How did you just offer it up to Doug? Is that why he came down?
So, I got it actually about a year ago, like this week, and about a month after getting it, I emailed him and said, "Hey, look, I got this car. I really didn't know what it was at the time. I knew it was weird. I knew it was bad. I just didn't know what it was." So I emailed him because I had been watching him for a while and said, "Hey, do you know any information about it? Do you have anything that you find interesting?" He emailed back and said, "No, I don't know anything about it, but if I'm ever in Atlanta, can I stop by and make a video of it?" He sent me an email. "I'm going to be in a couple months. Can I stop by?" And the rest is history.
Mm-hmm. So then you got Doug driving around your Yugo, and then if that's not enough, people on the Village Tricycle, as it were, you took it down to Freddie Hernandez, friend of the show, Tavares, right?
Yep. I took it down to Tavares. He, great dude. He's a real cool guy. I tweeted him one day and said, "Hey, I got a Yugo. You want to drive it? I'm going to be down in Orlando this weekend, or I'm going to be down in Florida around this time." And he said, "Sure, stop by." And we went down and made a couple of videos.
And this begs the obvious question of whose YouTube are you going to show up on next besides your own?
Man, I have a couple wish lists. If I could get on Hoovie's Garage, that'd be a huge thing. I love Hoovie. quirky and he's weird. Quirky has to put it in Doug's lingo. And then there's a guy. He lives in Georgia. He's Mike Finnegan from Roadkill.
Oh.
He has his own YouTube channel called Finnegan's Garage, and he's in Atlanta. And I'd love to go hang out with him. Or I don't know if he's in Atlanta, but I know he's in Georgia.
Yeah.
I'd love to go hang out with him.
Well, hopefully, I don't know. I'll see if we can put in a good word, because we've had both on the show. I don't know if you're aware, so maybe we can put a good word in for you. So,
definitely, because I just put in my submission for Hoobie's his car giveaway.
Yeah.
So hopefully he'll choose mine. I told him at the end of the video, hey, choose me. You can come down and you can drive a Yugo. It's a pretty unique experience.
Yeah, so let's get into that exactly. So we kind of I don't know quite where to start with you, because you have such a interesting collection of cars. So besides the Yugo, what else is in your fleet?
All right, so I have my '86 Yugo GV, and then I have an '88 Yugo GV. That's my parts car, which I'm currently disassembling and putting every piece on the shelf, because you have to have extra parts for a Yugo. And then I have my $125 Jeep DJ5. I have my 314,000 mile 2000 Silverado. And then I have my 2004 Volkswagen Passat. And so it's a small fleet, of 5 cars, but it's ever growing.
Mm-hmm. Well, you say small fleet. Most people go, well, your typical person only has 2, maybe 3 cars max. So, and much less a car that's just being cannibalized so another car can run. So, I mean...
Yeah, and typically for my age, most people don't have most people my age don't have cars like this,
which is crazy, because it's not. I mean, not as an offense. You have 300,000 miles on the pickup truck?
Yep.
And you have 2 weird Yugos, and to Passat, I think it's the most normal car, but obviously that's going to be the worst car you own, because that's how that goes. So, it's not your collection of, like, I'm doing air quotes here, and we'll see how well that comes across the podcast, but, like, sought-after vehicles. It's more of, like, a quirky is a good way to put it. You have a quirky fleet. So
yes. So I've always been drawn to things that are weird, things that, people don't go looking for. I search Craigslist all the time. I found the Yugo on Craigslist, and the guy was asking $13 for it, and I said, I'll give you. So I offered the guy $1,000, and he said no, he couldn't take less than $13, and I gave up on it. I didn't really know anything about the car. I just saw it and knew I had to have it. And after that, I waited about a month, and he emailed me back and said, all right, I'll take that $1,000, because who else was going to buy a Yugo, right?
Yeah.
So, and I said, at the time, I didn't have the money to buy the car. I didn't even. It was either buy the car or pay rent. And it turns out I'd sold a piece of stereo equipment through work an hour beforehand, and I asked the guy, all right, where are you at? I can take a look at it. He was 5 minutes away from me, so I considered that a sign, and I went and bought the car with money I didn't have, and and brought it home. My fiance about killed me. No, she just saw this yellow car that at the time, the clutch cable was bad in it, so I could barely get into gear. It was overheating, and all of it was simple fixes. But I'm like, she's like, how much did you pay for it? I'm like, $1,000. He's like, you didn't, and luckily she's a bit more on board now that I've accumulated more cars. So.
Which is not typically how that goes. Let me just warn you about that. It's not typically you just get more. Maybe it's like the equivalent of, cats for, like, the people listening. Like, if your fiance just showed up with, like, a random sick old cat, and then they just showed up with more, your typical reaction wouldn't be, yeah, okay, I get it. It would typically be like, why are you bringing home so many sick cats? So,
That being said, we found a dog on the side of the road yesterday, and his name is George. He's ours now.
You have
it works both ways.
you have a ability to collect the unloved things and give them the love they deserve, I guess, is the running theme through there. So
yeah, that's fair to say.
So why? I mean, let's take it back to when you were like really young. Like, how did you first like really get into cars? Because there has to be a through line between getting into cars and quirky cars. So
right. So there's kind of like 2 points in my life where they got me into cars. I've always been interested in them. My first memory is of my dad's 1967 Delmont 88. A lot of people don't know what that is, and I tell them, you remember when Ted Kennedy drove that car into the river and killed the girl? And they say, yeah, and I say he was driving a Delmont 88. And then they say, oh, yeah, that car. But it's this beautiful fire engine red, all original, 48,000-mile car. He bought when he was 18 out of Lady Jard for $200. And my first memory is of that car. And that's kind of what introduced me into cars. And then as I grew up, there was sports and just a lot of different things, and I kind of grew away from them. And then fast forward to a couple years out of high school, I got a job as a car salesman up in Charlotte. And I was around cars 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then when I quit, there was this big, I missed them. There was this big hole that needed to be filled. And I filled that with Yugos and Jeeps, and, you know, probably really bad investment.
Yeah, I mean, probably not the best ones. Although, to be fair, I think the Yugos probably bottomed out in value. I don't think that it could be worth any less than it's worth right now. So maybe collectible in a few years. I mean,
and for $125, my Jeep can only go up.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where I was kind of like, you know, drawn into your thing, because the Yugo brings you in, but then the collection of cars you get for, I'm going to just call it, you know, ridiculously cheap. Like, you have a travel trailer you got for basically free. Like,
yep, my 1967 Avion travel trailer.
Yeah.
And
the Jeep
I got that for...
Yeah, I'm sorry, go on.
I got the travel trailer for basically free.
Yeah.
From this is terrible, the whitest trash people I've ever met. Now I'm from a place in the middle of the boonies, and I mean it's like these people were literally shooting up as they signed the papers over to me. But I got it for basically free, and then you know, I'm just good at finding things for really cheap.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I guess part of that is rural Georgia. Probably not a lot of people of the same means as the people around where I'm at, where it's like, I'll give you a Volvo, but I want $2,000 for it because that's what it's really worth, even though it doesn't run or drive. Like, that's kind of the crazy shit I'm dealing with. So maybe there's that part of it, which...
I mean, it could be. Like, I'm in Atlanta, basically. I'm, you know, probably 30 minutes out from Atlanta.
Okay, so not really the boonies. So
no, it's not. It's like, I mean, I live right next to 1,000 acres of basically farmland where I go four-wheeling and stuff, take the Jeep out. But it is kind of like the boonies, but it's also, I'm 30 minutes away from Atlanta, one of the best Craigslist in the country.
Yeah.
And that's what I heavily rely on for all of my parts, because I never buy anything new.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you got this crazy fleet. You do little mods to it. I mean, for the people listening who are like, what is the channel about? It's cheap stuff. Like, to give an idea of, like, kind of the philosophy, not to put words in your mouth, of kind of what I've gone about. Like, Roadkill is doing the right thing the wrong way. Your mantra seems to be doing it just so it works and is kind of cool. Like, this is the bare minimum you need to enjoy cars. Like, if someone wants to know how you get into, like, you can't get into cars. Cars are super expensive. It's like, this is $125 and it's got like the Jeep you did an exhaust mod to for basically nothing.
Yeah, like I trade, like I put a brand new exhaust on the Yugo. I got a brand new exhaust, muffler and exhaust system for the Jeep, and I end up just straight piping it. But like the way I look at it is anybody can go out and get financed and buy, a $50,000 car, $100,000 car. And there's plenty of YouTubers making, videos on that. Like, going to Motor Trend, everything's, the Viper goes from 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds, and it's so cool. And, where there's not as many people saying, hey, look, I got this car for nothing, and I'm going to make it, cooler for almost nothing.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think that's part of the reason why I've gravitated to your channels and other channels like it, where it's this wonderful trend of, and again, I've warned you about this, is we just go immediately off topic here. We actually stayed on longer than I thought here. Of like, I don't know if you've seen it. Like, Atlanta has a fairly good car scene when it comes to like hypercars and supercars and all that stuff, and they pull up to Cars and Coffee. But I've seen this new kind of appreciation of like almost, I don't know what to quite call like the cars now, because they're not rat rods, but they're not derelicts. They're not really, they're kind of their own thing of like this like kind of cheap car culture that's kind of like become in vogue as of late, and it's kind of a wonderful place to be. So,
well, see, there's this car show called Caffeine and Octane in Atlanta. It's the largest month car show in the country. I'll take my Yugo up there occasionally if I, am ballsy enough to drive it on the interstates, and I'll take it up there, and it gets so much love. Like I parked it next to the wasn't the McLaren P1? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah.
The $1 million hypercar or whatever, and it was parked next to that. And there were more people taking pictures of the Yugo than there were of the P1. Like, people come up, is that a Yugo? I haven't seen one of those since, 93? And then there's the stupid jokes. Like, why, people always make the stupid jokes. In every video, you scroll down the comments on my video, every video is, how do you double the value of a Yugo? Put gas in it, stuff like that.
Do you have the same issue when I drive around like super nice cars where you pull up to the gas station and you get the person who wants to talk your ear off? Like, specifically to Challengers, this was always an issue of like, hey, my third niece's twice removed had a Challenger. Oh, wait, no, it was really more of a Barracuda, but I'm just going to sit here and talk your ear off about muscle cars for the next 20 minutes because I'm 80 and have nothing else to do with my time. Do you get a lot of that at gas stations?
You have no idea.
Yeah.
It's people coming up. My grandmother's ex-husband my grandmother's ex-husband's son who happened to be in the military had one, and he bought a Cadillac and they gave it to him for free, and and the biggest question I get is that a 3-cylinder? Is that the 3-cylinder? Yugo never put a 3-cylinder in a car. Everyone thinks they did, but they didn't. I've done so much research, and I've never found a 3-cylinder Yugo. I'm like, no, you're thinking of the Geo Metro.
Yeah. It's funny to me like that. I mean, I'm curious. So based on my wonderful ability to get people's age completely wrong via watching them on videos, I'm going to guess you're around late 20s, early 30s.
All right. I'm 21.
Okay. I don't know if that was insulting or not. So you're 21. You are driving around a Yugo, and you have friends, peers, people who are like, when people think millennial, they think that age of person. What do they like to the non-car related people in your life? Like, what do they think of that?
They don't understand my choice of cars. They don't. They're like, that damn hipster, or like that damn millennial, like driving around in his quirky car and the loud Jeep, and like, and my truck has a black hood, and so I look like a redneck, ghetto, hipster, millennial. Just throw all the labels on there, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they expect you to be like, the car with the fidget spinner and all that, so...
Yeah, I should make a video on that. Jump out of the car with some fidget spinners,
Just hot glue gun fidget spinners to the wheels. That's what you should do. Like, it's little spinners, like fidget spinners.
Yeah. Just duct tape them there. That would go great.
Yeah. I take no responsibility for the damage that will cause to that poor car. I can't imagine how badly that will throw off the weight of those wheels. I imagine, I don't know, so when you, it's just crazy to me. So you're going out, on the town for an evening. Do you bring the Yugo with you, or do you, take the Passat with you? Like, what are you taking out when because you're young man, you are going to go out on the town and have yourself maybe a beverage or two before, going somewhere. If you're going out, kind of show off, do you take the Yugo?
So, it depends on where I'm going. If I'm driving anywhere on the interstate, I either take my truck or take the Passat. And if it's up to me, I take my truck because I love my truck. That was my first car, near and dear to my heart. I love my truck. But if I'm going somewhere within 20 miles of my house, I'll not interstate, I'll take the Yugo because it just gets so much attention. And hell, I'll even take the Jeep out. It's not registered or road legal, but
it's Georgia. Who cares?
There's no date. I didn't put a date on the bill of sale, so as far as the cops are concerned, I bought it yesterday. Allegedly, you bought it yesterday, wait, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Let them come after me. What are they going to do? Find me?
Yeah. Because no one's ever regretted anything they said on the internet, that's for sure.
Yeah, never.
So, I'm just curious. So, do you, when you're out with your, peer group, people of your age, do they think it's cool, or do they think it's, what the hell are you driving it for?
Again, it depends on the people I'm with. If I'm with my friends, they love it, because they're all car people and they love it, and they're like me. They're weird and like different stuff. But if I'm with if I'm going out and it's my fiance's group, I don't even mention it because I just get so many looks I'll say I drive a Yugo and they'll be. First off is what's a Yugo, and I show them a Yugo, and they're like, "That's a piece of shit." Well, why do you drive that? Look at my Lexus. I'm like, I don't want to drive a glorified Toyota.
Yeah. Where was your car built? Japan. All the cars are built in Japan. My car was built in Yugoslavia. Come on now, that's not even a country.
My car was built in Yugoslavia by school children. Come on, let's get on my level.
So. Your car, I'm doing some quick math here, your car was, not only did the company no longer exist when you were born, but the country in which it was made no longer existed when you were born. That
sounds accurate, because it's, my YouTube demographics, for my very small view base I have, is, it's 30 to 45% Serbians.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Bosnians, Macedonia, Croatia, all the former Yugoslavian countries love it. And they're like, why'd you pay $1,000 for it? You can get one for $200, whatever money they use. And they're like, I'm like, all right, so they imported U.S. and one, we got the really shit version of the Yugo, and two, there's only about in between 500 to 1,000 left in the country, my best estimate. So they're a lot more rare here than they are there. But on the good part, I have made a lot of contacts saying, that they'll send me over some parts. So
yeah, it's I guess if you really desperately need a part, getting it shipped in from Bosnia Herzegovina or any of the former Yugoslavian countries would be absolutely, kind of the last straw. But if you have to, you have to. I'm trying to. So, let's see. I'm trying to figure out when Yugoslavia actually fell as a country. So, it looks like right around 91, 92. So, yeah, that's probably just before you were born, if my math is doing right.
Yeah. 95.
Yeah.
Born 95.
Yeah, so Yugoslavia no longer existed as a country, and the company no longer existed. That's crazy to me. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, no, I think the company did exist, because if the YouTube commenters are right, when they give me so much hate about my incorrect facts, the Yugo was produced into the 2000s, but not sold in America.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think you're right, because I know the plant was just bought, so it's probably right. So, well, at least the country didn't exist. So I just had a thought of, like, that would be like someone today, it would be basically the equivalent of someone, like, who was born 3 years ago, when they get of driving age, buying a Saab. Like, that's basically, that's crazy to me. Like,
yeah, but there's a lot more Saabs, and Saabs actually have a little better reputation. And they produced them up until November 11th, 2008.
Yeah. So, the Yugo or the Saab?
Yugo.
That they might have basically lasted as long as Saab, because I don't know when Saab shut down, but it was around that time. That's crazy. This is nutty. I'm learning way too much about Yugos at the moment, which I never thought I would say.
I know. I never thought I would know so much about them, but owning one tends to happen to you. People just throw these facts at you. They're like, "Ooh, Yugo, I know something about that," and I know that the car was made with 43 horsepower, even though they made one with the 1.3 liter engine that had 55 horsepower, but that was called the Zastava 45 or Zastava 55, and there's a lot to be debated about the horsepower that the Yugo creates, because every source says it's different.
Of course, because it would make too much sense if it was all the same. So,
I know.
So, what's the biggest difference in between the two Yugos you have?
They're basically the exact same. Dead. Every bolt is the exact same, because I've had them side by side whilst taking one apart. The only thing I can figure is the 86, the door panels were snapped in place, and the 88 had bolts. That's the only difference I found.
See, that's crazy to me, because when I think Yugo, I think way different from car to car, but I guess they were built so cheaply because they were literally just stamped out of metal, and almost no human ever touched it. So
yeah, and I mean that. So there's legend surrounding the factory that they would let school children, air quotes, school children come in as field trips, air quotes, and put together cars, and then they would send them out. They let the class put together a car and then send that car out of production. That's why there's stories like just transmissions just falling out and just engines just exploding and just everything going wrong. But mine has been dead solid for a year.
Yeah. Which may be the longest reliable ownership of a Yugo, which is crazy. Well, and two, the other thing is, this is a car from the 80s. You're driving it around now, 30-something years later, and it's held together, it works, it runs, and it kind of proves the point that unless the thing just rusts into oblivion, it's perfect, cheap, and efficient transportation. That's
it's if you can deal with going 55 on the interstate with semis flying past you, it's perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's perfect, except for exactly. So, it wasn't built for here either, and it was crazy that they ever sold it here in a way, but I'm really glad they did.
Well, it was sold here. I'll give you a little bit more history. By Malcolm Bricklin. And do you know who that is?
He invented. Well, he had his own line of Bricklin cars too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he brought in. He's the same guy responsible for Subaru.
Ah.
He brought Subarus to America.
Mm-hmm.
He's known as a serial entrepreneur, and Yugos were like one of his biggest failures, other than the Bricklin line of car.
Yeah. Well, arguments could still be made over Subaru because those cars don't deserve to be in this country. Terrible cars, terrible. I mean, he knew quirky because Subaru was quirky back in the day. I mean, they still are to some extent, but now it kind of feels forced quirky to me.
Yes. Like I actually just tweeted today how I really want a Subaru Brat.
Yes.
Like that's one of my dream cars with the seats, with the seats and the bed. It's just such a cool car.
You talked a bit about this in one of your recent videos. You went from farm tech to juggler.
Yes. For being only 21, I have a very broad range of skills and a very long list of employment history.
Really though? So, farm tech, like pharmacist to juggler.
I'm a certified pharmacy technician. Went through the course, went through the test, went through the certification, got a job, did it for a week, and quit. And then I was a juggler at the Renaissance Festival. Yes, you got to see this body wear tights. It was glorious.
I'm just more. I think that's the only time in human history, like, someone went from pharmacy technician to juggler voluntarily.
And then there's I was also a master finisher, a cabinet builder, a car salesman, photographer, wedding photographer, waiter. Like I said, I have a very long list of jobs.
Yeah. I mean, it's impressive, and I think that kind of goes to the point because you're putting together this travel trailer, and it's fascinating to watch that because it's not your typical car building thing, but it's fun to watch because you have to lay down floor, you got to put in shelving, you're talking about how you're going to put everything together, and it's automotive related, so you have my attention, and it's interesting because you get to see kind of like another thought side of like comfort, and I mean basically a travel trailer is nothing but cabinet building as far as I can really tell, right?
Yeah, I mean it's so well when I got it, it was completely just disgusting, rat infested, and so I ripped the whole thing out and I went to repair frame. I sealed the entire thing, every seam, every rivet I sealed. Redid plumbing, redid electrical, all this by myself. And I'm now to the point of I laid the subfloor and I'm painting it and then putting in the second layer of subflooring, and then the laminate flooring, and then all the fixtures. And I should be about done. And I'm about to start making more videos of that because we just put in an offer on an application for a house, and it has a place to park it, so it's not in a storage place, so I can't right now I can't work on it.
Oh, yeah, need the bigger workshop so you can work on all the
yes,
all of the
has, like, so it's a 2-car garage, but I can fit the two Yugos and the Jeep back to back on one spot. It's a glorious garage.
Can the neighbors see you from their driveway?
No.
Okay. So you're not going to have this. This was my reaction. So, we moved in up here, and my wife drove up her Ford Fiesta at the time, and then I drove up our V70R wagon. And the neighbors, they seem to kind of get both of those cars. There's no eyes batted or whatever. But then I drove my Volvo V70 station wagon with the catless straight pipe, no exhaust on it. And all the neighbors, and it's ratty as hell if you haven't seen it. And the neighbors, I got the look of like, please don't park that piece of shit outside. And I did, and I don't think they liked me for it. But
right now, I'm at my parents' house, and I have the Yugo parked outside my parents' house. It's a very straight lace HOA community, and man, they don't like that car. No one in the neighborhood likes the car.
But it's a Yugo. I mean, you can't not like a Yugo. I mean, you have to have basically like a heart of stone to not really like a Yugo. I mean, I know what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's why I think people who don't understand this need of the quirky cars, of the, you know, you're doing the Lord's work. You rescued that car. You saved it from the crusher. That car exists now because you saved it and are cannibalizing another car. But that's not the point.
It cancels out, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, are the seats comfortable? I can't imagine the seats are comfortable. I keep coming back to the Yugo, but it's just I need to know more. Like
it's more comfortable than the Passat, less comfortable than the truck. And at 6'3", I can fit in it. So, because I'm 6'3", 250 pounds, I'm a big guy.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable in it. So,
I mean,
take that how you will.
That's impressive, but you know, those Eastern Europeans, when they drive around, they have like all those layers of clothing on and those giant hats. So I get it. I get how that kind of makes sense in a weird, messed up logic. So.
Yeah, but then you get two people in it, like when Tavares and I and Doug and I were in it. It gets really tight really fast.
Well, that's the other thing I want to know. So you say your friends all love it. How many people are actually willing to drive with you in the Yugo?
Like, how many people are willing to drive with me?
Yeah.
They're all willing to drive with me, generally. They're not willing to get on the interstate, or, you know, and they get really nervous, like when I'm like going down hills and I'll hit like, to my estimates, because the speedo doesn't work. I was using the Snapchat filter that said the speed. I hit 70 in it, so they get really nervous. But most of them are willing to drive in it.
That's good. I mean, so kind of changing gears here. So the Yugo, good car, truck, good car, and I think the truck kind of like warped your opinion on cars, because I'm watching your video on the Passat you recently got. And you're like, this car only has like 100 and some thousand miles on it, and it's already falling apart. Your truck has like 300,000 miles on it. Like, that's awesome and kind of crazy. How many of those miles did you put on it yourself?
So I got the car at about 150. It was my dad's car. It was his work car. The transmission went out at about 150, and we put it in it. And it was given to me at my 15th birthday. So I put it in. I put about 150. I just rolled over to 314 today. So whatever 150, 314 is. But I put, between the Passat and my truck, I put about 1,500 miles a week on my car. Combined.
Yeah, which that's a lot.
It is. It's for work, though.
Yeah.
I write them off.
Yeah, I get that, and I drive a lot too, so I totally understand. But the Passat you're complaining about, because it has 150,000 miles on it, like, did no one ever explain to you German cars break down after 100,000 miles? Like,
man, the thing was, the car was free, so
well,
I take it on the chin, but like, it always has a timing problem. The transmission has started just going all to shit. The door locks only half the time work, and then there's the windows that you'll hit up and they'll go down, and just everything's going bad. Meanwhile, my truck is like, you want to go on a road trip? I got you.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a German car. That's what German cars do.
It is. They're known for their engineering. So.
Yeah. Great cars until they hit 100,000 miles and then run, for the most part. Has always been my experience. So, what is kind of... Well, I'm going to ask that a little bit later in our little more off the cuff thing. So, let me see here. I think I got all the stuff that I wanted to get prepared out of the way. Let me see here. Oh, have you ever crashed a car?
Yes. So when I got my truck, it was beautiful, pristine. And if you've seen my videos, the hood it was black and now it's rusted. When about 3 weeks after I started driving, got my license when I was 16, I rear-ended the only thing on the road bigger than I was, a Hummer.
Yeah.
Rear-ended it and just completely messed the front end up. They wanted to total it, but we fixed it. It bent the front crossbar in so far it kicked the engine. The engine was literally tilted up. We bent the front crossbar out, and the whole engine plopped back down, and it started right up.
Nice. I mean, you can't kill, that era of truck you have is like when American trucks were still very trucky. So, now they're much more like pretty boy. Like they don't.
They're very luxury. New Titan. I love it. I sold them for a little bit, and they're great trucks. It's just the interior is very plush, and I don't want to have to wipe my shoes before I get into my truck.
Yeah. It's such a big gulf between what the vehicle is actually supposed to be used for and what it actually is used for. The pickup truck is definitely getting high up there. So
yes, because I use my truck for work all the time. I use it for towing. I tow my trailer with it. I tow for work, and there's always stuff in the bed. I use my truck how a truck's supposed to be used. I'm not afraid to get it dirty and get it dented, and it's a truck. It has 314,000 miles. And if I haven't heard it so far, I'm not going to hurt it now.
It's character building. That's what it is. So
yes, we'll go with character.
Yeah. So this is now the segment of the show where I call it here's a weird generational thing. So are you familiar with the show Inside the Actor Studio?
Yes.
All right. So that was Old Man Ike. Do you youngins know anything about the Inside the Actor Studio? That they have the fidget spinners on there and all that. And this Nintendo, it's crazy. With the pippin and the ball. So we ask a series of questions here because this is obviously the automotive podcast of record. So as Freddie Hernandez had to get me to clarify, our opinions change day by day here, but, as car enthusiasts. So this is just as we sit now. This doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all. You're not married to these answers, but just as we sit here today as car enthusiasts. So to give you an idea of what we're talking about, I'll just get right into the first question of what is your favorite car?
My favorite car is the Yugo. It is my favorite car for a number of reasons. And I have favorite cars for different things. My favorite practical car is my truck. It is my dream. It is my car that it is my favorite practical car. My favorite all-around car is the Yugo because it's just weird and quirky and just it has a special place in my heart. But my favorite, say, sports car, that's what most people think of, is the original 2008 2010 Audi R8 with the manual gearbox. That's my favorite dream car.
So let me dial down on this a little bit more. Let's say money is no object for you. You can have a fleet of whatever you want sitting outside. You're going to daily drive the Yugo?
Yes.
All right. That is the proper answer then. So
that's just kind of who I am. That's I'd love to have a couple of them. I really want to do a swap and put something in the Yugo that make it the ultimate sleeper. That's coming down the road eventually, but it's just the Yugo itself. It's just such a weird, quirky car, and it embodies me. It's my favorite car.
Got it. Well, that's wonderful to hear. So then, what is your least favorite car?
Probably that's a hard one. I get mad when I see a Nissan Juke. when I see, let's see, minivans. Minivans as a whole piss me off because, all right, they're good for hauling kids, but so is a Yukon XL, and you can tow a boat.
True. I will make the argument in the minivan's sake of the Yukon was designed to haul a boat, and then the family came second. Minivan is based around the kids. Also better gas mileage.
Around kids, but generally the Yukon XL can seat one more. It has more trunk room, and now the era now it only gets marginally, like the minivan only gets marginally better gas mileage. So I see no place in the society for the minivan when you can get something that is, that all around is better and can be used for more things.
So would you say you hate the minivan or the Juke more?
Minivan, yeah, minivan. Yeah.
You
caught me off guard with that question, but minivan hands down.
All right. So what modification trends? So we're talking about, your Brodozers, your Stance, your, all that stuff. What is the one that you find yourself like? Not necessarily that you want to do it to your own car, but the one that you find yourself attracted to.
Man, I told you I'm from the boonies. I love a good jacked up truck. That's like my trend is a good jacked up, well done truck. There's all the people stancing their cars and people. I'm in Atlanta. They got the big. They're donking their cars and. I love the big jacked up trucks. That's my thing.
So, same question, opposite way. What is your least favorite one?
All right. So it's very specific, and it doesn't necessarily. It's an attribute that a couple different car communities have. It's when you get like the lowriders and like the tuners, and they have the tow bar or the tow hook sticking out the front or rear.
Yeah.
For no reason. That pisses me off.
That is the most specific answer we've gotten on this show, just so you're aware.
You asked, I answered. It pisses me off. I'm telling you, like, I'll go to these car shows and I'll see it and I'll just be like, this is a 2012 or 2012, 2015 car. You don't need that. It's not like you're driving my Yugo and you actually have a chance of breaking down. You're just doing that. Looks like shit. That's just my opinion.
So is it even more infuriating when it's like one that's obviously not even hooked up to anything structural?
Yes, it's just somebody that wants to look cool. I mean, that being said, my roll bar on my Jeep is mounted to the wheel well, nothing structural, but it's terrible.
So, what car do you dread being stuck behind at a red light? You're approaching the intersection. You have 3 lanes to choose from. There's or 2 lanes to choose from, and there's.
So I have 3 lanes. I have 3 lanes to choose from. And let's say there's a dump truck in one lane. There's a Mustang in the other, and then but both of those I would not pick because generally Mustang owners, they might just kill you. Dump truck is not going to go anywhere anytime fast. And then the other one that I can't stand is like early 2000s, late 90s, like Lincoln Town cars, because the person driving that is too old to have a license, and just I hate being stuck behind people going absurdly slow on 2-lane roads, and that's where I live. So I'll say Lincoln Town cars.
Yeah, I get that. Like a Blue Blood and like a Lincoln Town car. It makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. I agree with that. When all you see is knuckles on the steering wheel, like, yeah, like I'll get there eventually, Sonny. Let me see here. What automotive sound or noise do you love?
See, the automotive sound that I love. I love the sound of when you this is very oddly specific. when you release a jack, the psst
Yeah.
of the jack going down, and when you turn the you go to use a tire iron on a car to break the lug nut, the sound of the lug nut breaking.
Mm.
Very both oddly specific, but sounds that are great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of like answers that like I love the sound of car, just beautiful car notes, but like the sound of a jack, there's something oddly satisfying about that.
Mm-hmm. No, I know exactly what you mean, and I agree with you. When you get like the little like, and like everything stays where it's supposed to stay. So
yes, it's kind of like you get the relief of when the car hits the ground. Like, all right,
mm-hmm.
I did I put the tire on. We're good. Like it,
mm-hmm.
Because I released the car. It's embarrassing. I released the jack the other day and I forgot to put the tire on. So the Jeep is just sitting there, like the back of it's on, the rotor's on the ground, and
yeah,
had to jack back up and put the wheel back on.
Mm-hmm. Like that has to be the moment where you look around and like no one saw that, right? All right, we're good.
Like, the jack broke.
It
wasn't me.
Yeah, no, of course not. Like I don't know what happened. That's why you're supposed to use jack stands. That's what they say. So, so what automotive sound or noise do you hate?
I hate when I'm driving on the interstate and I hear a Kawasaki Ninja or just a Ricer coming up behind me, like going like 1,000 miles an hour, and then get pissed off when I don't see them. I hate the sound of it coming up behind me, like screaming.
Yeah.
And then let's see, is there any other sound? I'm just going off first thing that comes to mind.
That's another good one, a new one. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We're fine with the first answer. So
yeah, I think that's just like another thing that like makes me physically angry.
Yeah,
is when I hear that and I'm like, where's the fucking bike? Like,
mm-hmm.
Because in Atlanta they're not supposed to cut lanes. It's illegal to cut the lanes here,
mm-hmm.
but they do it anyway.
Yeah. And you want to be the guy who's looking out for the biker. What I hate is when the one goes zipping by and you turn on your signal to merge, and then you realize, oh, there's another jackass doing the same thing right behind you. Like,
and then they get pissed at me for not noticing them going 180 miles an hour down the interstate at rush hour.
Yeah, it's like
I'm all for looking out for bikers because I'm in the process of buying a bike right now. But it's that's just something I can't stand. People. It's their world. I'm just living in it.
Mm-hmm.
They're living their own bubble, and what can I do?
Yeah, and it's funny because they're going like, well, that guy wasn't even paying attention. It's like, no, you weren't paying attention because you should know. Like, if you're that second guy, no one knows you're there ever. Or especially, I've had it before where two bikers will come down on both sides of a lane, and in my little Fiesta, I try and give to one biker I see, the first one I see, the most amount of room by getting over to the other side of the lane, and then that guy gets pissed at me because I was giving the other guy room. It's like, nobody. I can only pay so much attention. Like, there's only so much situational awareness. What year Fiesta
did you have?
A 2014.
I had a 2014 Fiesta with the 5-speed manual in it.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun, zippy car.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I have the ST, so it's even funner and even zippier. So.
See, that was the car my parents got me for college, and then I preferred my truck, so I sold it. They're like, but your truck has 280,000 miles on it. I'm like, nah, it'll do good.
Yeah. I mean, they're great cars. I love my little Fiesta to death, but, I've owned a base Fiesta now with the automatic, which is awful. And then the Fiesta ST is one of the best cars, I think, on the planet right now, to be perfectly honest. Especially with the Cobb Stage 1 kit they gave me. Hey, thanks, Cobb. Shout out to Cobb. Go check out Cobb stuff. Like, I really got to sell Cobb stuff for them, though. But, Cobb Knob is nice. Anyway, lost my train of thought. Oh, I know I was going to ask you. So, here's the next question. So, we got two cars I'm going to give you, and you have to daily drive one of these two cars for the rest of your life, and you're not allowed to change the way it's modified at all. So I'm going to give it to you, and you have to take it and drive it as is. So the first vehicle is I will let you even pick, but it's a minivan that has been jacked up and has been done absolutely perfectly to be an off-road vehicle. The other car is a Yugo, but it's covered in fake tow hooks.
No, I'm taking the minivan. I'm taking the minivan.
Just
yeah, I can do the minivan with a nice lift on it. I can have fun in that. The Yugo with the fake tow hooks, I just couldn't live with myself.
Would the answer change at all if I gave you the R8, but it had one fake tow hook?
Yeah, I drive the R8. I just put. Am I allowed to put duct tape over the?
No, you have to keep the tow hook. Yep.
I could deal with the tow hook then.
All right, so we know your limit. It's like, how many tow hooks do we got to put on the R8 before you just don't have it? Like, you would just be like, yeah. How many?
You could probably just throw a ton on there. I mean, I've driven the reason I want an R8 so bad is I've driven a couple, and I just love them to death. They're just fantastic driving cars. You know, it's kind of like the computers don't do everything for you. Like, you drive a GTR, and it's like you're driving a Camry, a really fast Camry, because it does everything for you.
Yeah.
But with the manual gearbox, it's just like you're in control.
Mm-hmm.
So you could probably throw 100 on there and I can drive it.
It's just rattling around on the hood. It'd be awful. I think that might get you. All right. So then, what is your automotive pet peeve?
Automotive pet peeve. My automotive pet peeve is don't hate on other people's cars, because even if it's not your style, you gotta respect what other people are doing. Like, you know, my style is not, the ricers and the imports and, that whole scene, but I respect it. I respect the time and the effort put into it. I respect the love for the car. Mm-hmm. Just like people don't respect, like they don't like the jacked up trucks, but you got to respect that the time and the effort that went into it.
Yeah. Their
biggest pet peeve is people hating on other car cultures, when in reality we're just one big culture with different little factions.
Yeah. As the Team Clearco podcast puts it, like, just be donk friendly. Just be willing to embrace the other guy's weird thing. Like, because at the end of the day, like, what we should really be all about is loving our cars and loving each other,
Yeah, just loving each other. Peace, love, happiness. Let's all go get some pot and we'll smoke it together. We're good.
So, I have a question to wrap up here, and it, I think, is the most important question that can be asked on any automotive podcast. It was in our prepared section, so I hope you prepared for this. Really, it might be the most important question ever asked of anyone on any podcast, or really in the history of time. So I hope you're prepared for this. What is the hardest food to eat while driving?
Hands down, a burrito or a taco from Taco Bell.
Mm-hmm. See, that's a good go-to. That's where a lot of people go to. So.
And then, I mean, if you want to get a little bit more in depth, I went to, I don't know if you saw it on Twitter the other day, but I posted a picture. No, I tweeted to you the picture of the Bojangles box.
Yes.
I went. We had never been to Bojangles. We were on our way out of Charlotte, so we stopped by and said, "All right, we'll get the $20 fill-up thing." Mm-hmm. The box was the size of the car, so that it may not just be eating it is difficult, but the whole process of getting it out and getting the half gallon of sweet tea and pouring it into a cup and, eating the fried chicken and the mashed potatoes and mixing the gravy, that was pretty difficult as well.
Mm-hmm. I think your fried chicken one's a little better because I don't think there's really much of a way to eat that without getting your car all greasy, which then makes driving a bit of a hazardous going too.
See, I just drive with my knee all the time, so we're good there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So that's my taco driving thing because I can drive a manual car and eat a Taco Bell taco and have no mess. So this.
Do you put sauce on every bite or do you pre-put sauce?
Oh, I'm more of a if I think the best euphemism is I Superman that hoe. I just put it all over and then eat it. I'm not the sort of person who's got to have individual little shots.
Yeah, I put it on every bite because a Taco Bell taco is not edible without a substantial amount of sauce. It's not edible.
All right, let me teach you my technique here. You get the Taco Bell taco, you put it in your lap. I take no responsibility. I think I got a disclaimer here. I take no responsibility for anyone who crashes. This is for off-road use only. Anyway. So you take the Taco Bell taco, you put it in your lap, you kind of fold open. Are you talking hard shell or soft shell? This is an important distinction here.
No, always hard shell. That's the way to go.
All right, yeah. So you take the hard shell taco, and you kind of again to get to our little sexual metaphor here. You kind of stick your fingers in and spread it open a bit, and then you take multiple wrappers of the sauce. I typically take 3 or 4, and you kind of just rip them open. Again, you're ripping open a whole bunch of condoms, and you just rip that thing open, and then you just, I can't think of a better, word for this, but jizz that shit all over the inside until it's oozing out.
That's a good way, but then by the end of it, it's getting soggy. That's why I do the individual shots.
How long does it take you to eat a taco?
Not too long. I usually inhale it, but I don't like things to be soggy. That's one of my food pet peeves. I can sit here and talk food all day. I keep going back to my Twitter, but if you even looked at my Twitter, and I eat out in the last 48 hours. I'd say 95% of my meals have been eating out.
Yeah, I would say shame on you, but I'm pretty much in the same boat. So,
it's I can talk. I've actually thought about creating a YouTube channel solely dedicated to burgers because I eat so many burgers. I've thought about it, but I don't have the time for it between running a business and trying to get three videos out a week.
Well, just add that to the burger. Have you ever cooked a burger on your Yugo?
No, I don't think the engine gets hot enough for that.
Well, sir, I think there's only one way to find out. I'm just saying. Can you cook a burger on a Yugo? That's a good clickbaity title.
I can try to make some fries as well.
Mm-hmm.
It could work. It could work. I'll give you that.
Mm-hmm. Does a Yugo have a catalytic converter?
It did, but we cut it out when I got the new exhaust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mean it rotted out because you would never tamper with environmental protection stuff. That's
The Yugo no longer in Georgia. The oldest car that is required to get emissions is 91. So, as an 86 Yugo, there is no law saying that the catalytic converter is necessary to be on it.
So if it had a cat, you could probably get it hot enough to cook some. I don't know. I'm curious about this now, because added benefit, you can it'll make your Yugo smell like hamburgers.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you're ever driving through Atlanta, you got an open invitation. We will have a cookout on my Yugo, and I'll tell you, I make some really good burgers. Cheese in the middle, fried egg on top. We got this.
All right, cool. And you can explain to me what Pokemans is while I'm at it. So,
Yeah, my memory from like third grade will do good.
So, Austin. Oh, and there's a new follow-up question. Do you have a hardest makeup to apply while driving?
Let's see. For me, no, but getting food out of my beard while driving is about impossible.
That is that is a good point. I think that's a good place to end this. I think that summarizes the show pretty perfectly. That should be the tagline: "Getting food out of my beard while driving is next to impossible." So Austin, you're a great guy. You got a great YouTube channel. So, people can find it if they go to YouTube and search for Austin's Garage.
Yep, Austin's Garage. It should be youtube.com/Austin's Garage. Just Google it. Find me on Twitter. I'm always online. Like you said, I'm a millennial.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I belong.
Mm-hmm. What's sad is I'm technically a millennial too, so I'm making fun of my own kind. So, what is the Twitter account that they should go follow?
I believe it's at Cars and Cigars YT.
Mm-hmm. And then, do you have any of the other social media for the?
I think I have an Instagram, but I don't even think it's downloaded on my phone. So, just the Twitter and the YouTube page.
All right.
Maybe after I get a little bit bigger, I may make a Facebook. But right now, I'm at about 1,000 subscribers, so it's not quite there yet.
Well, hopefully we can help boost that number up for you because you do some great videos and people need to check them out. So, Austin, thanks so much for joining me this evening. I'm going to say goodbye to you off air. Everyone who's listening, I'll be right back. Austin, any closing words?
Thank y'all for having me, and I had a good time.
All right, excellent. And we'll be right back then. All right, thanks everyone so much for joining me this evening. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed having Austin on. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all at Untitled Car Show. You can follow our West Coast correspondent, Ryan West, at Ryanator122. And he's also in charge of the Instagram now, but I don't know what's going on over there. Ryan, get to work. This is what I do, is I yell at people through podcasting. So, thanks everyone so much for listening. Make sure to go check out TrackMonkeyApparel.com. The great guys and gals over there. They put together a fantastic product. They were the ones in charge of doing the pre-order for the Untitled Car Show shirts, but they put out a great product each and every month. They got all sorts of wonderful designs. Go check them out. See what they're up to. And just really support the people who support this show. Thanks everyone so much for listening. Have a good night. Have a good evening. Wherever you are, whatever time it is there. Thanks so much for listening. And please be safe out there, everyone.